Do you think that love and freedom can coexist? Well, I'm going to make an argument for you about the existence of love and freedom and ownership within the story of The Last Unicorn. So, for a start, let me give you a quick summary of the book. So, we start with the unicorn who has decided to set off on a journey to go and explore the world and look for the lost unicorns because she has heard a rumor that she is the last. She is very quickly captured by Mommy Fortuna and her midnight carnival, where she befriends the wizard Schmendrick, and they escape together and travel together as a kind of ill-fit D&D party. Schmendrick will ask for food in towns, and when they are doing this, they happen to come across Captain Coley and his crew of free men and Molly Grew, where Schmendrick does some true magic, spreading out the free men, and the unicorn and him are able to escape, where they are followed by Molly Grew, who ends up joining their party as well. And they travel on to King Haggard's castle, the place where they have heard the last of the unicorns are. They stop in the town of Hagsgate, which is just below Haggard's castle, and they learn of its curse from a man named Drin. And then they are accosted by the Red Bull on their way out of the city, and Schmendrick is forced to use magic to transform the unicorn into a human woman. And she is not very happy about it. They travel on to the castle where they meet King Haggard and Prince Lear, and Haggard allows them to stay in the castle and they search for the unicorns there. Over time, the unicorn slowly starts to forget who she is and believes that she is truly the Lady Amalthea, Schmendrick's niece. And she starts slowly falling in love with Prince Lear. Meanwhile, Molly Grew and Schmendrick have been tirelessly, as much as they can, searching the castle for any sign of unicorns or an entrance to the Red Bull's lair. And then they eventually discover an answer, and during this time, King Haggard reveals to the Lady Amalthea that the unicorns have been hidden away in the surf of the sea underneath his castle, so that he can always look at them and watch them. And so they enter the Red Bull's lair. The unicorn begs Schmendrick not to change her back into a unicorn and allow her to stay as the Lady Amalthea, and Schmendrick tries not to refuse, but Lear tells him that he needs to do what the story needs to be done, and so he turns her back into a unicorn. She faces down the Red Bull, she drives it into the sea, and frees all the unicorns. Haggard's castle falls, Lear becomes king, Schmendrick and Molly Grew travel forever following the steps of the unicorn. And that is the basics of the story. I did that very quickly because I'm going to be getting into a lot more detail with the rest of my analysis, I suppose. And I wanted to just very quickly go through that, and I will explain more of the story as I go on. Now, for examples of freedom, I want to start with Mommy Fortuna and her Midnight Carnival, because this is where the unicorn is first captured, and I think it sets the expectations for the rest of the story. Now, part of Mommy Fortuna's Midnight Carnival is that she captures regular animals and she disguises them as these mythical beasts. She is able to use her witch's magic in this way because witch's magic doesn't make anything real in this setting. It can only make illusions. And she uses this power on all of the creatures in the Midnight Carnival except for two, Selena the harpy and a spider. And I want to read a little bit about the spider. Strung on the loom of iron bars, the web was very simple and almost colorless, except for an occasional rainbow shiver when the spider scuttled out on it to put a thread right. But it drew the onlooker's eyes, and the unicorn's eyes as well, back and forth and steadily deeper until they seemed to be looking down into the great rifts in the world, black fissures that widened remorselessly, and yet would not fall into pieces as long as Arachne's web held the world together. The unicorn shook herself free with a sigh and saw the real web again. It was very simple, almost colorless. "It isn't like the others," she said. "No," Schmendrick agreed grudgingly. "But there's no credit due to Mommy Fortuna for that. You see, the spider believes. She sees those cat's cradles herself and thinks that them her own work. Belief makes all the difference in the magic of like Mommy Fortuna's. Why, if that troop of witlings withdrew their wonder, there'd be nothing left to her witchery but the sound of a spider weeping, and no one would hear it." And I just want to draw attention to this because I think it's really interesting the way that we are shown the idea of belief in something, belief, and how this spider believes herself to be Arachne of Lydia. And that will be important later because past this, the unicorn is imprisoned for, I believe, a few more days, and then she is able to be freed by Schmendrick, and she chooses to free all the animals in Mommy Fortuna's Midnight Carnival, as well as the spider, and that's when we get this quote. "Only the spider paid no mind when the unicorn called softly to her through the open door. Arachne was busy with a web which looked to her as though the Milky Way had begun to fall like snow. The unicorn whispered, 'Weaver, freedom is better. Freedom is better.' But the unicorn fled, unhearing, up and down her iron loom. She never stopped for a moment, even when the unicorn cried, 'It's really very attractive, Arachne, but it's not art.' The new web drifted down the bars like snow." And that, I think, is really interesting because we get a very direct connection of the unicorn being freedom. And we end the chapter with the tiny dry sound of a spider weeping. And it really shows we really get to see that the unicorn at this point very directly and very clearly represents the concept of freedom, even when that freedom is undesired, like with the spider who wanted to stay and believe that she was Arachne. She wanted to stay in the Midnight Carnival and believe that she was holding the universe in her webs. And we really get to see that in a very fascinating way with the spider, I think, in the example of freedom. And I want to move on to a more direct connection to love and freedom and the concepts there within. And we get that more with Molly Grew. You see, Molly Grew is the longtime lover, partner, girlfriend of Captain Coley, and she is the cook of the freed men. And we get this really interesting scene, where the freed men are talking about their grievances with Captain Coley, and I'd like to read a little bit of that for you. An aging rogue in a tattered velvet now slunk forward. "Captain, if we're to have folk songs, and I suppose we must, then I feel they ought to be true songs about real outlaws, not this lying life we live. No offense, Captain, but we really are not very merry when all's said." "I'm merry 24 hours a day, Dick Fancy," Coley said coldly. "That is a fact." "And we don't steal from the rich and give to the poor," Dick Fancy hurried on. "We steal from the poor because they can't fight back, most of them, and then take from the rich because and then the rich take from us, because they could wipe us out in a day. We don't rob the fat, greedy mayor on the highway. We pay him tribute every month to leave us alone. We never carry off proud bishops and keep them prisoner in the wood, feasting and entertaining them, because Molly hasn't any good dishes, and besides, we just wouldn't be very stimulating company for a bishop. When we go to the fair in disguise, we never win at archery or at single stick. We do get some nice compliments on our disguises, but no more than that. I sent a tapestry for judging once, Molly remembered. It came in fourth, fifth. A night at vigil. Everyone was doing vigils that year. Suddenly she was scrubbing her eyes with horny knuckles. Damn you, Coley. What? What? He yelled in exasperation. Is it my fault you didn't keep up with your weaving? Once you had your man, you let your accomplishments go. You don't sew or sing anymore. You haven't illuminated a manuscript in years. And what happened to the viola da gamba I got you? He turned to Schmendrick. We might as well be married the way she's gone to seed. The magician nodded fractionally and looked away. And I just wanted to talk about this because we can see that Molly Grew has given up a lot of her passions, a lot of her hobbies and desires, because she is the cook for Captain Coley and the Free Men. She is doing this labor, and it seems that Captain Coley, as the leader of his free men, is not doing a very good job at being their leader. And this kind of also gets into the concept of ownership that I talked about, if you want to look at it that way. And I do want to look at it that way. If we look at a group of people and their leader is, we think of it as their owner, then Captain Coley is failing at his job as the owner of the free men. And we can see that when he disregards his impact on not only what Dick Fancy was saying, but on what Molly Grew was saying. Later in the story, Schmendrick does magic that summons Robin Hood and his merry men. That allows Schmendrick to escape, aided by the unicorn, from Captain Coley and his freed men. And that is when we get this really lovely scene where Molly Grew catches up to them. And I'm going to read that now. She would be, Molly sniffed. It would be the last unicorn in the world that came to Molly Grew. She reached up and then lay her hand on the unicorn's cheek, but both of them flinched a little, and the touch came to rest on the swift shivering place under the jaw. Molly said, "It's all right. I forgive you." Unicorns are not to be forgiven. The magician felt himself growing giddy with jealousy, not only of the touch, but of something like a secret that was moving between Molly and the unicorn. Unicorns are for beginnings, he said, for innocence and purity, for newness. Unicorns are for young girls. Molly was stroking the unicorn's throat as timidly as though she were blind. She dried her grimy tears on the white mane. You don't know much about unicorns, she said. The sky was jade gray now, and the trees had been drawn on the dark moment were real trees again, hissing in the dawn wind. Schmendrick said coldly, looking at the unicorn, "We must go." Molly agreed promptly. "Aye, before the men stumble on us and slit your throat for cheating them, the poor lads." She looked over her shoulder. "I had some things I wanted to take, but they don't matter now. I'm ready." And here we get another example of the unicorn acting as a envoy of freedom, as the representation of freedom, I suppose. Because we get the unicorn as Molly's path to freedom, because even if Molly loved Captain Coley, it might not have been recent that she loved him, but if she loved him at any point, we are reminded that freedom is better. And the next example I'm going to talk about is where it'll be kind of a mess, because this is where all of the three themes I've brought up kind of intertwine, and where we have to discuss the difference between love and ownership in the concept of The Last Unicorn. And so we are going to skip over a portion of this book that takes place in Hagsgate Town, because it has some things that I could talk about, but it really will just complicate things further, and this video is already going to be very, very long, I believe. So I would like to shorten it as much as I can. Um, so we're going to skip over Hagsgate Town, and we are going to go straight to after Amalthea has been, or the unicorn has been turned into Lady Amalthea, and they are living in the castle. And at this point, they have been in the castle for quite some time, and Prince Lear is just immediately drawn to the Lady Amalthea. He is clamoring after her constantly. He is doing great feats of heroism in order to draw her attention. And that's when we get this conversation with the Lady Amalthea and Molly Grew. And this is what Molly Grew says to the Lady Amalthea. Molly said, "He wishes you to think of him. Knights and princes know only one way to be remembered. It's not his fault. I think he does very well." The Lady Amalthea turned her eyes to the cat again, her long fingers twisted at a seam of her satin gown. "No, he does not want my thoughts," she said softly. "He wants me, as much as the Red Bull did, with no more understanding, but he frightens me even more than the Red Bull, because he has a kind heart. No, I will never speak a promising word to him." So we get the unicorn at this point, the Lady Amalthea, stating that Prince Lear wants her in the way that the Red Bull wanted her, that the Red Bull wanted her, and the Red Bull wanted to conquer her. He wanted to take her and have ownership over her in a way. And so we get this idea that she believes that Lear only wants that of her. And so she continues on ignoring him until one night she has a nightmare that drives her out of her bedroom in the middle of the night. And he sees her, and he says this to her. "I would court you with more grace," he said, "if I knew how. My dragons and my feats of arms weary you, but they are all I have to offer. I have been a hero for very long. I have not been a hero for very long, and before I was a hero I was nothing at all. Nothing but my father's dull, soft son. Perhaps I am only dull in a new way now. But I am here, and it is wrong of you to let me go to waste. I wish you wanted something of me. It wouldn't have to be a valiant deed, just useful." And in response, she asks him to sing for her and to drown out her dreams, which he does. And this scene is finished with King Haggard being heard in the distance, coming up the stairs, clamoring about the singing, and Prince Lear and the Lady Amalthea take each other's hands and they run deeper into the castle. And this is the scene where I think we most directly get an example of kind of how Lear sees love. And I think it's really interesting. He begs her to make use of him. He begs her to not let him go to waste. He sees his acts of love, his idea of love, as being useful to someone, as being a tool in a way. And I think that's really interesting, but we can see in a few pages why he might think that way, because we get this conversation with King Haggard, where he says, well, Lady Amalthea says to him, "Your son is coming home," she said. "Let us watch him together." King Haggard came slowly to stand beside her at the parapet, but he gave no more than a glance to the tiny glinting figure riding home. "Nay, what concern have you or I with Lear truly?" he asked. "He's none of mine, either by birth or belonging. I picked him up where someone else had put him down, thinking that I had never been happy and never had a son. It was pleasant enough at first, but it died quickly. All things die when I pick them up. I do not know why they die, but it has always been so, save for one dear possession that has not turned cold and dull as I guarded it, the only thing that has ever belonged to me." His grim face gave sudden starved leap of a sprung trap. "And Lear will be no help in finding it," he said. "He has never even known what it is." So here we get King Haggard talking about this idea of picking something up and that being the thing that he like means he holds something dear. He picks it up and he puts it down again, which means he doesn't care for it, except for one thing, which is at this point unicorns. And we see that he is so obsessed with unicorns that he has sought to own all of them, of course. And there is one unicorn, though, that he does not own, which is the Lady Amalthea. He doesn't own the Lady Amalthea because Prince Lear owns her. And we get this idea in a few pages later, on page 247. We get this conversation. "Everything dies," she said to Prince Lear. "Is it good? It is good that everything dies. I want to die when you die. Do not let him enchant me. Do not let him make me immortal. I am no unicorn, no magical creature. I am human, and I love you." He answered her, saying gently, "I don't know much about enchantments, except how to break them, but I know that even the very greatest wizards are powerless against two who keep each other. And this one is only poor Schmendrick after all. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of anything. Whatever you have been, you are mine now, and I can hold you." And this, we have a direct connection between the concepts of ownership and love, where being loved or loving someone is having ownership over them, holding them, being theirs. And the idea of Amalthea confessing and then Prince Lear responding with, "You are mine now, I can hold you," is just a direct connection to these concepts, I would say. And now, not to spoil a 58-year-old book, but Schmendrick does in fact turn the Lady Amalthea back into a unicorn, and she confronts the Red Bull and is struggling until Prince Lear throws himself in front of it, dies unceremoniously, and then she is able to drive it into the sea, freeing all the unicorns. And she comes back and she brings Prince Lear back to life, of course, and she leaves him with a touch to his heart. And we get to see the unicorn once again acting as a vector of freedom for the unicorns in the same way that she did to the creatures of the Midnight Carnival. And after she brings Prince Lear back to life, she says nothing and she departs. Later, Schmendrick and King Lear now are discussing what to do with their time. And we get this conversation. But Schmendrick, standing behind him, said quietly, "But your majesty, it may not be. You must not follow her." The king turned and he looked like Haggard. "Magician, she is mine." He paused, and then he went on in a gentler tone, close to pleading. "She was twice raised me up from death, and what will I be without her but dead for a third time?" He took Schmendrick by the wrist, with a grip strong enough to powder bones, but the magician did not move. Lear said, "I am not King Haggard. I do not wish to capture her, but only to spend my life following after her." We get this idea once again that Lear's love of the unicorn is so powerful that he believes in his ownership of her. He believes that because they were in love, that he owns her forever. And he wants to spend his whole life following in the steps of the woman he loves, even though the unicorn can't keep him. A unicorn can't keep anything because she is freedom. She represents freedom. And so she will free you even if you don't want to be, like the spider that believed itself to be Arachne. And I don't want to end this on a super downer note because I feel like that was a little sad that Lear does not get to be with the unicorn. And I started this video with the idea of, can love and freedom coexist? And I kind of talked about the usage of the themes of freedom and love and ownership throughout this video. And so I want to bring your attention back to Schmendrick. And this is going to be very silly because Schmendrick, I haven't talked a lot about throughout this video, but he is the first companion of the unicorn. And after they start traveling together, or when they do start traveling together, he has this grand speech where he begs the unicorn and he says, "Take me with you for luck, for laughs, for the unknown. Take me with you." And there is this established very quickly barrier between Schmendrick and the unicorn. Schmendrick constantly is trying to be closer to the unicorn, but the unicorn is frankly very cold towards him, very frank with him. And on top of that, there is this concept of touch throughout the book where Molly Grew is constantly touching the unicorn for comfort, or later on she touches Schmendrick for comfort. But there's a concept with touching the unicorn specifically that Schmendrick is not able to do it. Like, he is not allowed to touch the unicorn. And that kind of helps us establish this concept of distance between the unicorn and Schmendrick. That is established as being odd because Molly Grew instantly has this connection to the unicorn. She is instantly able to touch her and be with her in various ways. And I think one of the reasons for this is that Schmendrick views the unicorn as a tool. She is not a tool in the way that, like, Haggard would think of her as, like, a little thing to put on the shelf, but he sees her as a vector for him getting his magic powers, as a way for him to obtain his magic powers. And you can kind of see his relationship start to develop in a way where he becomes more friendly, not only with the unicorn, but with Molly Grew throughout the story. And at the end, the unicorn appears before Schmendrick in the night, and he says this to her, and I'm just going to read this because it is probably my favorite quote of the book. And I'm going to read a little bit longer than I originally planned, but I think you'll get the point. "She touched you twice," he said in a little while. "The first touch was to bring you to life again, but the second was for you." Lear did not answer, and the magician never knew if he heard or not. Schmendrick dreamed the unicorn came and stood by him at moonrise. The thin night wind lifted and spilled her mane, and the moon shone on the snowflake crafting of her small head. He knew it was a dream, but he was happy to see her. "How beautiful you are," he said. "I never really told you." He would have roused the others, but her eyes sang to him a warning, as clearly as two frightened birds, and he knew that if he moved to call Molly or Lear, he would wake himself, and she would vanish. So he said only, "They love you more, I think, though I do the best I can." "That is why," she said, and he could not tell what she was answering. So this quote, "They love you more, I think, but I do the best I can," I think is really, really important, because I think it kind of encapsulates why the unicorn, I think it just kind of encapsulates the concepts of ownership and love, and what that means to the unicorn who exists as freedom, because Molly and Lear have some sort of desire of ownership over the unicorn, because Molly sees herself as the, like, chosen maiden of the last unicorn, and Lear sees himself as the lover of the last unicorn, and both of these positions have put them in a place of distinct kind of ownership. And we kind of get that with the way that Molly touches her with a conversation with the cat that lives in Haggard's castle, because the cat distinctly says that he will not let the Lady Amalthea touch him because it is a higher price than he could bear. And so we get this conversation, and I think it's showing that Schmendrick, of the three, is to the unicorn a friend. And she chose to appear to him in her full physical form. She chose to appear to Schmendrick out of the three because he was her friend, and there was nothing more to it than that. They were friends. And I also want to just share a tiny little bit of this last portion of the book to really bring together this concept of love and of freedom. And so we get this portion at the end with Molly Grew and with Schmendrick. She said no word while he saddled his horse, but when he began on her own, she put her hand on his arm. Do you truly hope that we may find her? There was something I forgot to say. Schmendrick looked at her over his shoulder. The morning sunlight made his eyes seem gay as grass, but now and then, when he stooped into the horse's shadow, there stirred a deeper greenness in his gaze. The green of pine needles that has a faint, cool bitterness about it. He said, I fear it for her sake, but it would mean that she too is a wanderer now. And that is a fate for human beings, not for unicorns. But I hope, of course I hope. Then he smiled at Molly and took her hand in his. Anyway, since you and I must now choose one road to follow, out of the many that run to the same place in the end, it might as well be a road that the unicorn has taken. We may never see her, but we will always know where she has been. Come then. Come with me. So, do I think love and freedom can coexist? Yes, I do. I think that love and freedom exist in choice. I think that it is in choosing who you share your life with, and choosing who you follow the roads of, what you do with your life. I think that love and freedom are held together in choice. And I think that that last portion really encapsulates that. We have moved Schmendrick from take me with you to come with me. He is asking her to make the choice to come with him. He is giving her the choice to come with him. He is not saying that she has gone down to seed because they have been together so long after a full long season together. And I think that that is what I have to say about The Last Unicorn. Yeah. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you watched all of this video, I hope that that was enjoyable and fun. It was my first time trying to script a whole long video, so that was fun. I definitely kind of did my own thing a couple times. But yeah, that was my last unicorn video, I guess. I have actually filmed a video about The Last Unicorn, I think 4 times now, but I always was dissatisfied with it. So I'm hoping that this one will keep me satisfied and I will be able to get through editing it and post it. So thank you so much for being here. If you watched this whole video, I hope you enjoyed my silly little thoughts on The Last Unicorn. And one of my favorite concepts, which is the concept of love and freedom coexisting. So thank you so much. I hope that you have a lovely day, and I hope that you remember to stay off-putting and stay obscene, because being off-putting and being obscene is very important in times when conformity is demanded of us. So remember to stay weird, my friends.